Here's a question that just doesn't seem to make sense. Why would some of the most powerful, most ruthless men in history, we're talking emperors who clawed their way to the absolute top, willingly hand over everything they built to a mediocre firstborn son? Especially when a much smarter, much more capable younger son was standing right there. It sounds completely insane, right? Okay, let's dive into a perfect example of this. Emperor Hui of Jin. Now, his father was one of the sharpest political minds in all of Chinese history. I mean, this guy unified the country through sheer force of will. And yet, he chooses his famously clueless son to take over? So what gives? Was he just having an off day? Maybe getting a little old? I mean, just to give you an idea of who we're talking about, this is the guy who, when told his people were starving because they had no rice, genuinely asked, well, why don't they just eat meat? It's so absurd you kind of have to laugh. But look, if you think these founding emperors, these men who survived civil wars and assassination plots, were just dumber than we are about picking a successor, then you've completely missed the brutal, cold logic that held 2,000 years of imperial history together. To really get their logic, you have to first understand the biggest, most dangerous temptation any emperor could ever face. And that was the temptation of picking the best person for the job, meritocracy. It sounds like a great idea, doesn't it? In reality, it was a guaranteed recipe for total disaster. Come on, let's just put ourselves in the emperor's shoes for a minute. You've just conquered the entire world. You have a dozen sons. Everything inside you, your gut, your pride, is screaming, pick the best one, right? The smartest, the toughest, the one who's most like you. You just let the cream rise to the top. What could possibly go wrong with that? Well, here's exactly what goes wrong. The second you say the throne goes to the most capable son, you've just kicked open Pandora's box. See, in ancient politics, ability is totally subjective. One son's a brilliant scholar, another's a war hero, a third is a genius administrator. So who's the best? Well, they all think it's them. And the only way to really prove it is to eliminate the competition. The palace turns into a death match, and the second you're gone, the entire empire tears itself to shreds. And that's the absolute key here. The real question these emperors were trying to answer wasn't smart kid or dumb kid. It was a question of pure survival. It was, how do I build a system that can stop my empire from completely imploding the moment I'm in the ground? So, to solve this terrifying problem, these ancient political thinkers did something that sounds completely backwards. They gave up on trying to find the perfect ruler. Instead, they engineered a system that was designed to survive even the worst one. It was a cold, it was mathematical, and it was a brutally effective fix. This rule, which goes back over 3,000 years, was the absolute core of that system. Primogeniture. The firstborn son of the principal wife gets the throne. That's it. No debate, no discussion. And this wasn't just some dusty old ritual. It was a political contract as hard as steel. Now this is where you can see the real genius of the system. It takes all of those fuzzy, debatable things like talent or skill, and it replaces them with a single, objective, biological fact. You can argue about who's a better general, you can debate who has a better reputation, but you simply cannot argue about who was born first to the empress. It's a yes or no question locked in at birth. And that is the system's true power. It wasn't just about picking a person. It was about neutralizing the entire political game. Because once every single official knows, from day one, who the next emperor is going to be, there's absolutely no reason to gamble on the second or third son. All the loyalty, all the power, it all flows to one predetermined spot. You build the empire on consensus, not conspiracy. And that allows it to survive a mediocre ruler because nobody has a legitimate reason to start a fight. Okay, so nice theory. But what actually happened when someone got arrogant enough to think they could break the rules? Well, the consequences were, almost every single time, a catastrophic cascade of bloodshed. Just look at the story of Li Shimin. He was the second son, a military genius who basically won the empire for his dad. But the rules said his older, less capable brother was the heir. Li Shimin couldn't live with that. He ambushed his brother, killed him at the Xuanwu Gate, and then forced his own father to hand over the throne. He went on to become one of China's greatest emperors. Sounds like a success, right? No, wrong. By breaking that rule, he planted a time bomb at the heart of his dynasty. His own sons looked at what he did and thought, hey, if dad could do it, why can't we? And for the next 300 years, the Tang dynasty was just cursed with one bloody, violent succession after another. Okay, example number 2.
the Kangxi Emperor. This guy is often called the greatest emperor in Chinese history, a total political giant. But even he made a profoundly arrogant and devastating mistake.
He got rid of his designated heir and, thinking he was smart enough to control it all, he told his other sons to openly compete for the throne. The result was the infamous Nine Princes contest. His brilliant sons tore the empire to pieces. They formed factions, they assassinated rivals, they emptied the treasury. The great Kangxi emperor was literally seen weeping in open court, completely broken by the savagery he himself had unleashed. He learned the hardest way possible: no man, not even the greatest emperor, is smart enough to outwit the corrosive poison of unchecked ambition. But let's contrast those disasters with a guy who started as a peasant, fought his way to the throne, and understood this lesson so deeply it was in his bones. This is Zhu Yanzhang, the founder of the Ming Dynasty. His beloved and very capable firstborn son died young, and that left him with a terrible choice. The obvious candidate was his fourth son, Zhu Di, a military genius, just like him. The technical heir, though, was his dead son's kid, his young, pretty unremarkable grandson. So the emperor was wavering, really tempted to just pick his brilliant fourth son. But then an advisor asked him this one simple, chilling question. And in that moment, Zhu Yuanzhang saw the absolute chaos he was about to unleash. If he skipped the direct line of succession, he was basically giving all his other sons a green light to do the exact same thing. He chose his grandson, preserving the rule, and with it, the hope for stability. And here is the ultimate delicious irony. That brilliant fourth son, Zhu Di, he did rebel. He started a brutal civil war and took the throne by force. But decades later, when he was sitting on that throne and had to choose between his own brilliant second son and his kind of mediocre firstborn, he chose the mediocre one without even hesitating. The man who broke the rule became its most ferocious defender. Because only then, when he felt the weight of the crown, did he finally understand the true price of chaos.
So what's the final verdict on this whole system? It was a brutal trade-off. A trade-off that valued order and stability above everything else, even above genius.
And the trade-off is laid out right here. The system knowingly, willingly sacrifices the chance for that once-in-a-generation, truly great ruler. But what it gets in return is something far, far more valuable: survival. It creates a baseline consensus, a fundamental agreement that holds the entire civilization together, even when the person in charge is weak. You know, ultimately, this system understood a fundamental truth about power. A civilization doesn't survive because a brilliant leader just happens to show up at the right time. It survives because it has a system, a ruthless consensus, that is strong enough to hold firm even when a brilliant leader doesn't show up. This simple principle, primogeniture, was more durable than the Great Wall. It was more important than any single fortress. Yeah, it was rigid, it was cold, and on the surface it could look incredibly stupid. But this one unbreakable rule quietly became the load-bearing pillar that held a massive civilization together for over 2,000 years. And that's a better track record than most of the political ideas we've come up with since, wouldn't you say?